We begin this edition of the weekly roundup of Iran protests by focusing on the protests of medical staff and healthcare workers, who, despite the overwhelming occupational and financial pressures, selflessly continue to serve our dear people. Last week, nurses and emergency medical technicians from the Yazd University of Medical Sciences protested their dire living conditions. Emergency medical personnel in Gilan province also gathered in Rasht to protest their difficult living conditions, chanting, "Enough with promises, our tables are empty." On Monday, March 10th, Tabriz also witnessed a protest gathering of nurses and medical staff from Mardani Azar Hospital. Tabriz again witnessed a protest gathering of medical staff in front of the city's health center in the Nesf-i-Rah district. The medical staff protested the non-payment of arrears and the failure to address their demands, chanting, "Justice, justice." Last week, we also witnessed a protest gathering of staff from Razi Psychiatric Hospital in Tehran in front of the regime's Ministry of Health. Service personnel at Anzali Hospital also went on strike to protest the non-payment of wages and holiday bonuses. Now, let's take a look at the gatherings and protests of oil and gas workers who are deprived of the minimum requirements of life in the worst climatic conditions and in one of the most difficult jobs, on the sea of oil and gas. Last week, contract workers at the 4th refinery of South Pars held a rally protesting their difficult living conditions, chanting, "Stop wage suppression." On Tuesday, workers at the second phase of the Kangan Petro refinery also stopped working and went on strike to protest the non-payment of their salaries, benefits, and holiday bonuses. Workers at the 5th refinery of South Pars also condemned wage suppression and announced their support for the demand for a 70% wage increase. Here we take a look at the protests of retirees who still see the streets as the only way to achieve their plundered rights. In Ahvaz, retirees gathered in front of the Social Security Organization and protested their poor living conditions and inflation, chanting, "Let go of the headscarf, control inflation, and law-breaking government, shame on you." In another gathering and march in Ahvaz, retirees carried placards that read, "Our rights can only be achieved on the streets," chanting, "No humiliation, no disgrace, death to this justice." Shush also witnessed a large presence of retirees who chanted, "From Khuzestan to Tehran, death to these managers, and enough of oppression and injustice, our tables are empty, demanding overdue and decent livelihood demands for retirees. In Sanandaj, retirees demanded the full implementation of a law passed in 2010, which requires the government to adjust the pensions of the retirees based on inflation and growing costs of living. Now, let's take a look at the gathering of families of political prisoners sentenced to death in front of the infamous Evin prison on Tuesday, March 11th. On this day, a group of families of political prisoners sentenced to death protested the issuance of death sentences for their children. In addition to photos of their children, the families of political prisoners held a placard that read, "No to executions." This gathering, which coincided with the 59th week of the No to Executions Tuesdays campaign, was the family's latest gathering in front of Evin prison. On Friday, March 7th, Ahvaz's Naderi Bazaar witnessed clashes between hardworking street vendors and repressive law enforcement forces. The clashes, which began on Thursday with a brutal attack by law enforcement thugs on the street vendors' stalls, continued for hours with severe beatings of the street vendors, tear gas, and gunfire by the law enforcement thugs. The street vendors, who were forced to pay amounts to the municipality for their stall locations, resisted the law enforcement thugs who were destroying and looting their meager property and assets. On Saturday, March 8th, Tehran also witnessed a protest gathering of Tehran University employees. In this gathering, Tehran University employees demanded the removal of the minister and the head of the university. On Saturday, Mashhad witnessed a strike by heavy mixer trucks in protest against the non-receipt of their claims from the municipality. The drivers parked their cars on the side of the street and raised their voices in protest. On Monday, March 10th, bazaar merchants in Gonabad, Khorasan Razavi province, protested the harassment by the city's government excise department and the holding of an exhibition called Resistance Economy. On Tuesday, March 11th, Iran Khodro drivers also went on strike to protest their dire economic situation. On Wednesday, March 12th, a group of our disabled people protested the non-payment of arrears, the drafting of a regulation on subsistence allowances, and addressing the situation of those waiting for support services. They demanded their plundered rights. This week, we also have a report from the defrauded depositors, who gathered in front of the regime's central bank chanting, "Is this the central bank or a center of theft?" On Wednesday, March 12th, Kazvin also witnessed a gathering of applicants for state-backed national housing in front of the regime's General Directorate of Roads and Urban Development. The protesters demanded their rights and the receipt of housing for which they have paid for years, but there is no news of housing. And we have a report from the brutal attack of law enforcement thugs on the people of Qanat Nasseri in Iraq. On Wednesday, March 12th, law enforcement thugs attacked the people of Qanat Nasseri, who had gathered to protest the illegal closure of the roundabout and the dead end of their homes, throwing tear gas at them and beating them. We also have news of a protest gathering of contract operators of the Western Regional Electricity Company in Kermanshah on Wednesday, March 12th, who protested their working and living conditions. This marks the end of this edition of Iran Protests Roundup. This was the last episode of the Iran Protests Week program in the Iranian calendar year 1403. We hope we have been able to reflect the voice of the Iranian people's protest.
Follow the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran on YouTube, Facebook, X, and our website.